What cheer, y'all? Welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, we're by the Kentucky Derby. We're on to the second jewel of the Triple Crown, the Preakness, and we're going to start with our contender profiles. We don't know exactly what the field is yet, and as usual, Pimlico and the Preakness are a little behind the times and don't seem to respect the bettors very much by having the field firm and the post drawn. If I sound a little on the bitter side, it is because I went to the Preakness 3 years ago with my 90-year-old mother in a wheelchair, and there was no handicap access despite advertising it everywhere, and it made for a rather difficult experience. Get it together, Pimlico. That's all I'm going to say about that. Anyway, on to the race. We're going to talk about Clever again. This is a new shooter, as always is the case with the Preakness. This one is trained by Steve Asmussen and Jose Ortiz in the Iron, so pretty good connections, owned by Winchell Thoroughbreds. They're always on the Derby Trail every year. You see, this one's fairly lightly raced, only 3 starts, but 2 wins in a second, including a win in the Hot Spring Stakes in Oaklawn at the end of March. This one is a pretty interesting prospect at the outset. Just taking a look at what I've seen, we'll take a look at the pedigree, and you see by American Pharaoh, so 2 turns shouldn't be an issue, I wouldn't think, and flattering underneath by Galileo. Galileos can run all day long, so this is not going to be a problem distance-wise. I'm not going to go over all the particulars of a pedigree page. We did that for the Derby. I'm sure most of you have taken a look at that. And just recognize once again that the numbers aren't necessarily as accurate as they used to be because they don't keep track of the chefs de race. And just always want to make that point clear. But if you look at the average winning distances, which we'll see in a second, I don't think it's going to be a problem. You look at the Conduit Mare profile, plenty of stamina on the back end, and you see this pedigree is from the Conduit Mare profile is skewed towards stamina, so that is not going to be a problem whatsoever for this for Clever. Again, I don't think. Taking a look at the past performances, now we always want to note the thing about the Preakness is now. We're going to stand on formality and show you the pedigree. It's not as important for the Preakness. It's by you'll hear a lot of trainers say it's the easiest of the jewels of the Triple Crown to win because it is a little on the short side. Plus, the horses you do have coming back from the Derby are a little vulnerable because they just ran a big race that they were all pointed to. So the Preakness is a little on the anticlimactic side, while still being an important race. And incidentally, I do want to say the people at Pimlico were extremely hospitable and very, very nice and very helpful. And my issue is more with the tracks. I want to get that clear right off the bat. But nice people at Pimlico. So anyway, looking at the past performances, we see a couple of things that we really have to like. Progression. Now, you see, we've talked about this in the Derby and with our analysis elements of handicapping. Class rating and race rating, extremely important for 3-year-olds and 2-year-olds for that matter. All horses, but mainly for 2 and 3-year-olds. Now, you look, and you see in April at Keeneland, Clever again debuted at a 4.5 furlong race and got a 114 class rating against a 110 race rating for a maiden. That's pretty good for those early 2-year-old races. And you see Dream Away won it, who just ran at Aqueduct yesterday in Churchill Downs, I believe it was, in a stakes race, and did pretty well. So that's a pretty good effort. And you see it was a key race because they both, Dream Away and Clever again, came back to win. Moving on, they obviously there were some issues at 2, so they weren't able to do much. So they debuted Clever again in February at Oaklawn in a maiden and look. Class rating 116, race rating 112. Now, that's good, but it's not overly precocious. And what I mean by that is when you see, I remember last year Nash, for instance, who we remember from the Fairgrounds. I think he debuted with like a 120, a very high class rating. And when you see that, it demonstrates a ton of talent. Now Nash kind of filtered out, didn't quite measure up at 3, but the higher the class rating in, obviously the better, especially when you do it against a better rated race. So here, you see you go from a 110 to a 112 race rating, so a better class of racing. You see it was for more money too, 110,000, and you see the class rating at 116. So that's a horse who's improving, and you see he did it with ease on the front end. Really wasn't bothered very much. Set honest fractions, not overly quick, and just did what a good horse is supposed to do. Now, the one thing we look at and you say, well, it was with Lasix. How can he do without it? Well, look what happened in the Hot Spring Stakes at Oak Lawn. It was at a mile. A lot of good things here. Number one, the class rating increased again to 118, and in a higher rated race at 113. So this is a horse, as we mentioned, when you see this, this means a horse is running against themselves. They're not running against the field. So now the other thing that's really nice to see is you look at the pace fractions. That's that E1, E2, and LP in the middle of the running lines. And you see in the maiden race in February, pretty easy, right? 85, 87, 98. That means he really didn't have much of a challenge. He basically was allowed to get on the lead and go in a 10-horse field. So we want to see what happens when he steps up in class. That's a really big, ungraded stakes. It's a pretty big step up from a maiden. And you see he answered the call, and here's the best part of it. He had to run a little more on the front end, 98 and 105, and he still had a 91 to finish. That's pretty good. So that tells you that, number one, distance isn't going to be a problem. Class, so far, hasn't been a problem. And he got a career-high Brisnet speed figure with each successive race. Jose Ortiz is staying in the irons, also a very good thing. And he's coming to this race fresh. You look down at the work tab, and you see just clicking right along. April 12th, April 19th, April 27th, May 6th. Steady, steady, steady. And here's a really nice thing. Steve Asmussen, generally, when he works horses, number one, you never see bullets. But number two, generally, his 4 furlong works are around 49, 50. And the 5 furlong works are like 101. Look at that April 27th work. That's 1 minute flat. So that's pretty good. I mean, that gives you a little indication. I think this horse is feeling good. So while we don't know how he can do at the graded stakes level, if we recall, at this year, this is a top-heavy 3-year-old class. I mean, it's basically, journalism, Baeza, and sovereignty. And that's it. And then everybody else. I mean, it's turned out that way. I mean, at the shorter distances, like a mile, you do have Barnes and you have a couple others. But at the 2-turn level, it's pretty top-heavy. So there's room for a horse like Clever Again to move in. So we want to consider that. Now, I went back and watched the Hot Springs, and I'll tell you, pretty impressive. This horse has a very easy way of going. Did not look hurried or pressured at all. Was going along very easily, and you see, drew off. Now, what kind of field was it? You had Gaming in second. Now, Gaming just came back in the Pat Day Mile and ran a pretty good second. I wouldn't say it was a great one. I mean, he really couldn't get to the leader. Was no match, but excuse me. But he ran a good race. I mean, the jury's still out on Gaming as to how good he really is, but he is a quality 3-year-old. We could say that. And Perfect Force for the coach, D. Wayne Lucas, is a horse who has been getting progressively better, is running a lot of starts, and I'm not sure is a stakes level horse, probably more of an allowance level. But the point is, if you look at this type of progression, again, I think this is a horse running against himself. And that's really what you want to see. So this is a pretty exciting prospect going into this year's Preakness, particularly when you consider Rodriguez bowing out of the race with an injury. So the front end maybe, there's a few who want to get there, but it could be a pretty good spot for Clever again. So our first take, we'll look at the positives. Early lick. I like, this horse has an easy way of going, and he doesn't look bothered on the front end. He did encounter some pressure last time, and he handled it very well. So, again, I don't know how good the quality of this field is going to be, and he'd be able to get on the lead and it'd be gone. It's very conceivable. We'll see what journalism does. If he runs, obviously it's a different story. Pedigree. This horse can run all day. You saw those average winning distances with Galileo on the bottom at 10.5 and American Pharaoh on top. He's got no problem with 2 turns. A little note here, as I mentioned, the Preakness pedigree isn't overly important, and there are some horses that maybe look like 2 turns might be an issue. Sometimes they can get it in the Preakness, so just kind of a little thought there. And finally, progression. We talked about that. I mean, he's just improving. He's getting better at just the right time, and I think it's logical. Makes a lot of sense that Steve Asmussen would move him up into this race, particularly when you consider the way the fields have been the last couple of years where they haven't been the greatest. Well, what are the negatives? Class. Who's he done it against? We're not sure. He hasn't done it at the graded stakes level. But is this Preakness, could you consider it a true grade 1, particularly if journalism bows out or Sandman doesn't run, and then it becomes kind of almost a grade 3 or an ungraded stakes in some respects if you really look at the field. But we still have to think, he hasn't faced really good company yet, so it's certainly a question. And then the other negative is there seem to be a few horses who will like to be up and around the leader, so he may encounter more pressure than he normally does. But at the outset, I would just say that some of the horses are, like you take River Thames, for instance, his pedigree is a little challenged for 2 turns. Particularly noting that bad third in the Bluegrass, so he may not want to get up on the lead and try to go all the way with it. And if you have a couple of horses who sit back for that reason, it's going to look awful good for Clever again. So, in sum, I like this horse. And from what I've seen so far, just at the outset, I think this is a really neat addition to the Preakness, and I think he's very dangerous to take this race. We'll see what the field looks like. Hopefully, Pimlico, you will... I'll do the post draws at some point soon, so we'll know who actually is running. But right now, I think Clever, again, it looks pretty darn good to me. We're going to do this for all the horses for the Preakness. We'll include those that come from the Derby. We've already covered them ad nauseum for our elements of handicapping, but we did learn a couple of things from the Derby that we can use here, so we'll cover them as well. And I'm not sure, time permitting, I'll be able to do the true elements of handicapping that we like to normally do for the Preakness, but we're going to try. And the first start is, at the very least, you'll have contender profiles in all of them, and we'll certainly put it all together with an assessment of the race when we have the full field and everything else. So that'll be on the way as well. We'll do a full card for Pimlico. We'll have best bets, value plays, all that good stuff. But time is of the essence this week, so I hope you understand if we can't do quite as comprehensive a coverage as we do for the Kentucky Derby. So I hope this gives you a good idea of what you're looking at with Clever again, and it helps you with your own assessment. Certainly, if you do like content like this, please like and subscribe. Again, thanks so much to all of you who continue to grow our community and continue to add those comments. Loving that. We've had some really good ones. Peter Pan yesterday came out about as we expected. Got the trifecta. Hope you did too. It was a pretty interesting race. I think Hill Road certainly stamped himself as a viable contender for the Belmont. So we'll see what happens there. So plenty more content coming. That's it from here. I'll talk to you soon. And until then, be well.